Good morning, guys. It is Monday morning. We're going to cover a few more pages. So this will be YouTube video, I guess, number 2. And just if you hear some noise in the background, they're flying F-15s or something today. So anyway, just bear with me. We'll do like we did yesterday morning. We'll go for about 5 minutes. I've got a few things that I'd like to key on. And I mentioned to the other day, the first one I want to talk about is there was a famous minister, evangelical minister, probably the most famous minister of all time, and his name was Billy Graham. He was from Charlotte, and he preached all over the country, and he just died not too long ago. He was a minister for probably over 50 years, and during this time of the Cold War and whatnot, one of his big things is he talked about Russia and the USSR because they suppressed people, their religious freedom. So he denounced that quite often, and a lot of his messages were just talking about how it was not appropriate that, you know, communism didn't allow people to follow religion. So anyway, again, he passed away not too long ago, and just a really prominent religious figure of the world. Did a lot for mankind in general. So I did want to talk about him for a couple of minutes. Next, again, we're sort of going through the book and just hitting on some topics. The GI Bill, I told you that was to help pay for veterans' tuition and living expenses, and more than 2.3 million former soldiers took advantage of this bill. Bill Friday was a guy that was real big in supporting that. And to this day, people still use the GI Bill after they've served in the military. So I wanted to mention that. It's just something that I think that you should know what it is for the people that have served our country. That was just sort of payback for them putting their lives on the line for us each and every day. Another big thing that we'll talk about for a second is Russia. Russia launched the first satellite, or the first satellite, and it was called the Sputnik. And this really threw Americans for, I guess, a tizzy, or, you know, they panicked. We thought, well, oh my gosh, we are behind Russia now in space exploration. So what that did, the positive out of this was schools in the United States, they really beefed up their science and math programs, and it didn't take us very long to catch up with them, but it challenged us to improve our school systems and to advance in science and math, and we follow behind them quickly. But the Sputnik and the Russians were the first people in space. They were the first satellite, put the first satellite into orbit. But again, it just challenged us. And all of this, you know, is going on during the Cold War. I wanted to talk about that. A couple of other things. I think I told you one time, and I think North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, has more miles of paved highway than any other state in the country. And Carr Scott, a governor in 1949, he campaigned on the basis that he was going to get the farmers out of the mud. And I think you know what I mean by that. They were trying to get away from dirt roads and pave roads. And on a national level, you've heard of the interstate system like I-40, I-95 that we travel on frequently. Eisenhower secured billions of dollars, and he is the president that gets credit for creating the interstate highway system. So I wanted to mention that. So roads are improving, which allows farmers to get their crops to market in just a much more timely manner, and just for people to traverse across the state in general. If you're following along on page 353, you can see that huge picture. That's I-40. All of you are, you know, on I-40 every time you go to Raleigh, and that was one of Eisenhower's part of his interstate program. And I was in Raleigh yesterday, actually, and you can tell that that's just a work in progress. They're always working on the roads. North Carolina has a very complex highway system. Moving along, and this is where we'll wrap up today. I'm trying to keep these little sessions sort of short and just hit on the things that we need to hit on. Technology, we talk about the Research Triangle Park all the time, and the triangle is going to come to play during this time, and we're going to, you know, go farther and into the idea of technology. And developers made plans for what was called the RTP, the Research Triangle Park. And the triangle formed by the state's 3 major universities, Duke, North Carolina State, and the University of North Carolina. This land was called the RTP. The idea was for private executives, state employees, and university officials to work together to attract research and development firms, and it's still very, very, it's one of the most important research areas, or one of the most prominent research areas in our country to this day. I think lastly, the last thing that I'd like to talk about is on page 355, it had moving to the suburbs, and you can see a couple of pictures there, and they're great pictures. You know, I like for you to look at the ones as we talk about things. You can see the woman, and she's sitting in front of the air conditioner, and air conditioning and television changed lives for people in the 1950s. So you can just imagine up into the 50s in the hot summertime in North Carolina what it would have been like to have not had conditioned air. And air conditioning was one of the greatest inventions of all time. And you can see the lady there with the air conditioner. You can see the kids in the bottom picture that are gathered around that black and white TV. And it looks like the show they're watching, I get a kick out of this, it looks like they were watching The Muppets, which was a show that hung on there for a while. Obviously, you guys have a much different way of watching TV. You can watch it from your phones, and just to think we're doing what we're doing right now with this YouTube video compared to these kids sitting around watching a black and white TV. And instead of sitting outside on the porch on steamy summer nights, families could come inside and they could gather around a TV in the air conditioning. So you can imagine how that was just a huge, how much that changed their lives, from sitting outside on the porch at night just sweating to going inside and watching a TV under air conditioning, within air conditioning. It says that the first televisions went on sale just after World War II. They spread quickly, and by 1960, 87% of the nation's families owned a television set. So anyway, that's a pretty high percentage. So everybody was watching TV. We've got 3 or 4 pages left, and then really in the chapter, and then you shouldn't have any problem completing this chapter 9.2 quiz. Some of you may have already done that. You may get ahead of me. So again, we'll just take things one day at a time, and we'll touch base again in another day or so, and go ahead and knock out this 9.2 quiz. And if you have any questions, again, email me or whatever. And again, hope everybody is good, staying safe, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.